Alright, so we finally made it to our last two, our starter deck characters, and this time we're looking at Scorpion, 6 hand size, 28 vitality, death, evil, fire. This guy's a monster. Alright, so lose 2 vitality, or if your attack's blocked, your opponent loses 2 vitality. Okay, lose 1 vitality, this attack gets +2 or -2 speed, and then Desperation E, you just get +6 damage on your Desperation attacks. So, everything feeds everything else so wonderfully for Scorpion. It's just beautiful. I love it. And they're very strong. My goodness. For a starter deck character, this is ridiculous. There is no reason for anyone who's looking to get into UFS not to pick up the MK Turbo versus starter box thing with Scorpion and Sub, because they're amazing. Now this guy's great because if you can navigate just the gameplay, the interaction, the ebb and flow between you and your opponent, if you understand how to play that mind game, Scorpion is incredibly rewarding. Because his 2 enhances that cost him vitality kind of have this weird vibe to them. Because one of them tells your opponent that they don't want to block your attack. Right? And the other one is making it more difficult to block your attack. Which almost says, like, if you're pumping the speed of your attack, you're assuming that they're going to block it. Right? Like, this is kind of it's a weird thing. So if I'm losing 2, so if they block it, they're going to lose 2, and then I pump the speed of it as well, I'm already discouraging them from blocking it. And I know his support does a lot of the same stuff. So you've got to watch out where you're not investing too much vitality, and then they don't block, and then you got to make sure you're dealing enough damage to warrant the amount of damage you're doing to yourself. Does that make sense at all? Or maybe not? I don't know. Because what I see people doing with him right now is they're cutting themselves a lot, and really the net difference of damage, and I'm talking about the neutral game before we get into Desperation, but the net difference of damage is like, okay, I did 5 damage to my opponent, but I dealt 3 damage to me, or I did 6 to my opponent and I dealt 4 to me. Okay, so you're really only getting like 2 damage ahead, but you've lost a card from your hand. So that's like running, like, you wouldn't just run a lot of 2 damage attacks during the neutral game. That doesn't make a ton of sense, right? Like, I don't want to just get ahead by 2 damage on an attack at the beginning of a game. That's not ideal for me. Yeah, you want to create these lose-lose situations, but you have to be very careful about how much you commit into them with your vitality as a resource, because your vitality is a resource, but it's also how you're going to die. And if your opponent knows that and can take advantage of your poor decision-making in that, they can lure you into easy backswings, right? A strong opponent's going to do that. They're going to make the decision whether to block or not based on how much they think they can get out of you, how much they can pull you into it. And just be careful about that. Once you're in Desperation, yeah, the game changes a bit, because now you're getting those +6s on everything, and your opponents can't just let things through anymore. They need answers. They need ways to deal with things. Okay? I don't think the idea of just rushing yourself down to Desperation and then swinging like a madman is the ideal way to go with him. You're going to win games with like that. 100%. You will win games doing that. But is it consistent? Not really. What I feel about Scorpion's best angle is if you can figure out a way to lock games out without ever going into Desperation, you're only that much scarier when you're in Desperation. Okay? Like, I don't want to build my deck around the fact that, like, oh yeah, once I get to Desperation, I'm going to crush them. Okay? Because that's not planning for success. That's just, like, why would you do that? Why would you do over half of the work for your opponent before getting to your regular game plan? Right? Like, unless you're guaranteed to win every time doing that, that's not a wise decision. Especially once people figure out how to lock you down, right? It's like, oh yeah, sure, keep cutting yourself. Oh, now he threw his first big attack. All right, well, speed reset and stop you, knock you over. Now you're committed and you're at Desperation. I'm just going to body you on the backswing now that you're knocked over and you can't reduce speed anymore. You have to worry about those things because people are going to figure out how to play around it. So that being said, even life gain in him is going to be valuable because it's going to allow you to stay in the neutral game. It's going to allow you to stay fresh, right? Going back to the idea where you want to have a strong, neutral, non-desperation game as Scorpion, having a way to control your vitality beyond just cutting yourself down is a benefit. Okay. The other thing you want to do with Scorpion is you need to be really looking at how much damage you can guarantee pushing through to your opponent. So if you have a strong neutral game and you're landing some pokes here, you're doing some throw damage there, however you're doing it, then that's the time, once you're getting your opponent down in some vitality and you get them to a manageable range, that's when you start looking at your attacks and thinking, okay, how many enhances can I put on these to guarantee burn damage to put them down into a game-winning situation for me? And that's where you want to be with him. I would never want to, as a Scorpion player, have my basic game plan to be to hurt myself like crazy and then hope that my opponent's not going to do more damage to me coming back. Especially on that neutral. Like, that's terrible if I'm hurting myself for 4 damage every turn to land 6 damage attacks. Or not every turn, every attack. If I'm hurting myself for 4 per attack to do 6 damage per attack, that's not good. Right? Like, that's not how my early game wants to play out. I want my early game to be just throwing threatening attacks regardless of how much vitality I'm paying. And then when my opponent's hurting, then I want to start paying for all my vitality to put the crazy pressure on them. Because your vitality as a resource will run out. Especially if your opponent's just bodying into you as well. They're not just going to sit there and take it. So be mindful of those kind of things. Yes, you'll steal games. And I think that might be a problem too for new players getting into Scorpion. Is that you will win games for free because your opponent just didn't happen to have the block and you got the Desperation +6 and you just domed them with it. Okay? Don't let that lure you into a false sense of security because the 6 damage just wins you games. Because an intelligent player can block. An intelligent player can reduce speed. They know how to do that. All right? Your vitality loss also reduces speed. And again, that's strong neutral game playing. Okay? You can just sit back. You don't need to push hard into things. You can just lose vitality, reduce speed, wall up, block, protect yourself, right? Do chip damage. And then when you're ready, leverage a higher vitality count than your opponent. Like, I guess that's really it. Get an advantage in terms of vitality and then leverage that advantage. Okay? Always leverage your advantages. That's just like fundamental games, period. Gain an advantage, leverage it. Don't hurt yourself down and then your plan is to force yourself to gain more advantage off being in desperation, because you're not. You're burning through your resources in order to make your abilities stronger, but you're giving your opponent an advantage in that process, right? And you don't want to be doing that, because again, if they have a way to shut you down, if they have a way to turn you off at that moment, you're in big trouble. So that's how I feel about Scorpion. Insanely powerful. Don't get me wrong. If I'm building this guy, it's insanely powerful. I want to use throws. I want life gain. I might want reversals if I can get them. I don't know if there are any desperation reversals right now, but it doesn't matter. I want them. Right? Like, that's what I want. If I'm playing evil or death, I might even want to set myself up so that I can just undeniably wall people out while grinding them down. Like, there's so many cool things you can do with them, right? Like, so many. So, anyways, that's how I feel about this guy. Hopefully that helps some people. Maybe not. Maybe disagree with me. That's fine too. Next guy, subs.